What's going on, my good people? Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining us on another FCP Euro DIY. Today, we're going to be working on a 2004 BMW E46 M3. On the E46 behind me, we're going to be covering how to install an Eventuri intake. This kit is available on fcpo.com and includes everything you need to do this DIY, from the intake and filter portion to the scoop for the air duct, as well as the shields and the hardware necessary for this DIY. This intake is capable of adding 5 to 15 horsepower and 8 to 12 foot-pounds to your S54 engine. But before we get started on that, let's take a look at some of the tools we're going to need for this DIY. For this DIY, we're going to be using a flathead screwdriver or a 6mm and 7mm hex head. I have these CTA flexible screwdrivers, which I'll be using for that. We have a 10mm socket and a tamper-proof T20. That's going to be very important to replace your air mat from the old unit to the new one. We have a couple of extensions, a 1/4-inch ratchet. I have an electric ratchet as well, just to speed things up. And then always nice to have is a flashlight and some pliers should you decide to remove the cowling like we did today. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started on this DIY. All right, my good people, under the hood, we're going to start by removing our cowling here. Now, this isn't mandatory, but it makes life a little bit easier. It's held down by 4 plastic rivets. So I'm just going to use some pliers to pull those up. Go ahead and set those to the side. Pull that up. From there, we can remove this connecting elbow. Now we're going to go ahead and work on disconnecting our headlight module and moving it out of the way. Now, to do that, we're just going to go ahead and remove the 2 electrical connectors. You want to pinch and pull up, as these are just held in here like normal electrical plugs. The tab is on the bottom towards the headlight for the outboard one. And for the inboard one, it is going to be on the bottom as well. Let's pull that off like that. Then this cover simply lifts up and off. It's got 3 little locking tabs that lock it onto the headlight module. Now we're going to go ahead and disconnect our mass airflow sensor. There's a tab on either side that you want to squeeze and then pull back to remove. Just going to tuck that up above this brace for now. From there, we can work on loosening the clamp that holds the airbox to the connecting elbow. That is sitting right behind the mass airflow sensor. For that, I'm just going to use a 6mm hex bit on the CTA flexible screwdriver. However, a flathead screwdriver will do this just fine. Now we're going to work on removing the 2 10mm bolts and the 1 10mm nut that hold our module and airbox in place. I'll start with the nut and work my way around. With those removed, we can simply lift the module out of the way. We can just fold it forward over the headlight. Now we can grab the airbox and pop it out of its rubber grommet down below, as well as pulling it off of the tube over here. Hang on to this. We're going to have to remove our mass airflow sensor in just a moment. With that out of the way, we can work on removing this lower grommet, as we'll be using this to secure our new shield. And then next on the list, we're going to want to loosen the clamp at the end of our elbow where it connects to our airbox, so that we can go ahead and have some adjustability there when we install our new setup. For us, we have a strut brace in place. However, we're still able to access the clamp. Again, I'm using the 6mm CTA tool, but you can use a flathead screwdriver. The goal is to loosen that clamp enough so that this elbow can rotate up and down once we're ready to install our new intake. Now, with our elbow nice and loose, the next thing is going to be to remove this old brake ducting. To do so, you're simply going to grab it and pull it up. Sometimes you need to compress it down below where it clips in at the base so you can pull it up. What I did to make my life a little bit easier was I reached in through the bumper and I just squeezed this plastic in so it would release from this locking ring, and we can pull this out. Now we're going to go ahead and clean up this area a bit, and then we'll meet you over at the workbench so we can swap over our mass airflow sensor and then pick it up from there. Now we're going to go ahead and work on setting up our new piece from Eventuri. On the old airbox, we have a rubber seal that we're going to want to reuse. You simply pull this off and feed it onto our nice CNC'd piece here. There is a beveled side, if you will, or tapered, and a flat side to this. The flat side is the one that receives the seal. as that's going to go back into our stock elbow. Just like that. Using a tamper-proof T20, we're going to remove our mass airflow sensor. Pull out the sensor, set it into our new housing. Give it a light twist as it goes in so that O-ring doesn't bind up. It also only fits one way on the CNC piece, so it's really hard to confuse. And then Eventuri gives us some fresh hardware to use. Make sure you do not use the old hardware, as that's intended to go into plastic only. Then we can take our T20 and just snug them down. All right, with those snugged up, feel free to dispose of this, throw it in the trunk, give it away. Let's head back to the car and get ready for some install. All right, with our area cleaned up and our mass airflow sensor ready to go on the new parts, we're going to go ahead and install this shield so we can continue on this DIY. It's going to sit just like that. It's going to help keep some of that engine heat out of everything and some of that alternator heat as well. Once we get those 10mm nuts started, we can just go ahead and sink them down with the 10mm socket on the electric ratchet. We're going to get our actual intake itself and our new CNC piece with our mass airflow sensor ready for install, and we'll start dropping that in. All right, my good people, now that we have our shield on, we're going to want to go ahead and install our ducting. So we're going to feed this from in front of the bumper and catch it up top, and then we're going to want to pull it from up top. You don't want to put any pressure on the carbon. You're going to risk breaking it, but this you can grab from up top. Here's our sealing ring. This is what we want to make sure that our scoop clips into all the way. It's got a tapered edge, which then goes into this groove. So let's go ahead and get this fed in next. The scoop is going to be fed right next to our fog light here. And we're going to receive it up top where the old scoop was. Once we're happy with the orientation of it, which kind of just only goes in one way, it's just a matter of pulling it up. Once it's in there, you'll be able to move it around. It's not going to go anywhere. Now, let's get ready to install our new filter. All right, at this point we have our filter part of the unit. We have our CNC piece with our mass airflow sensor. The inner clamp that goes to the mass airflow sensor is nice and tight. However, this outer clamp is loose so that we can adjust the cone as we need to. You can use a flathead screwdriver to tighten these up, or a 7mm hex bit or socket. Now we're going to go ahead and feed it in. Feed it into our elbow at the same time. Now make sure that rubber sealing ring is fully covered all the way around, while also making sure that this is going to line up with the 10mm bolt that holds the light module in place, as well as this assembly. In addition to that, you want to make sure you have a good angle for your mass airflow sensor before you plug that in. Once you're happy with where everything sits, we're going to go ahead and install this last shield that is held on by 2 plastic rivets near the upper radiator hose. Next, we're going to slide in our other heat shield. Then we'll get our rivets ready and we'll install those as well. We'll start with this top one. Feed it in and then lock it in. Same thing with the bottom one. Now we're going to go ahead and install our lower rivet. All right, with everything sitting how we like it, we're going to go ahead and tighten down our clamps now. Starting with our 7mm head up front, or a flathead screwdriver. Go ahead and tighten this one down. You don't want to tighten it too much to the point where you're going to crack the carbon. Basically, once the driver stops, then you can just snug it up another quarter turn and you'll be good. Can't hurt to check the next clamp as well. I'm going to switch over to my 6mm head. Again, flathead screwdriver works great here as well. With that nice and tight, we have the elbow up top on our air box. Now with that, while we're up here, we'll plug in our mass airflow sensor so we don't forget it. Headlight module can come back over. Even though this isn't holding anything in, it doesn't hurt to put this 10mm back in place should you ever want to revert back to stock. Then we can go ahead and install the lower 10mm. This one's going to be a little bit tricky to feed in as you're lining up 3 things at the same time. Then we can situate our 10mm nut and now snug them all down. Now we can put our protective cover back on. With our cover back on, we can go ahead and reconnect our electrical connectors. Now with that done, all we have left to do is reinstall our cowl piece. We can wrap up this DIY. And with that, my good people, that's going to conclude this DIY. All you have left to do is go out there, drive it, and let us know how it sounds in the comment box below. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more DIYs like this one, please consider subscribing. We make new ones all the time. As always, thank you for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.